Hey, it's Joseph here. I just realized in order to compare two cameras, I need three cameras. I'm shooting this video with Canon M50, and then this one is Canon M6 Mark II, and then this is Sony A7C. So today we are gonna mainly compare these two cameras. I may occasionally refer to Canon M50 as well because of the flip out screen, but it is going to be mainly Canon M6 Mark II versus Sony A7C. As far as Canon M6 Mark II goes, I have recently reviewed this camera on my channel, so I'll leave a link in the description for you guys to check that out. So Sony A7C is relatively new camera that I was testing for about a month as I kind of debated whether I should upgrade to a full frame camera or not. And I'm sure that is exactly why you are here, because you've been debating whether you should make the jump to the full frame camera. Because Sony A7C is a full frame sensor camera, it is supposed to give you a better looking photos and videos with more shallow depth of field or shallower depth of field, the background blur, the bokeh, along with some advanced features that gives you a bit more control than entry to intermediate level of cameras. And you might actually ask, why Sony? Canon has full frame camera as well. Well, yes, I do know that they do have the R series lineup, which is a full frame of Canon. But the reason why I looked at Sony A7C particularly is because this is the smallest full frame camera in relatively very comparable size of the body. I would like to have a full frame camera in a very small body. Compactness is something I appreciate a lot, so I wanted to see if this is worth having. And there are a few things that I did not like about Canon camera, so I thought it might be a good opportunity to consider the other side of the world. Unfortunately, no camera is perfect. Each of the cameras is gonna have pros and cons, so hopefully this video will be able to tell you that. Whilst I have purchased Canon M50 and M6 Mark II, this Sony A7C is a product review sample that B&H has provided for me to test out for a month. Thanks B&H for letting me try this camera. I'll leave links in the description for you guys to look for those cameras and buy them if you find any of the camera to be a good fit for you. And there are exhaustive amount of videos out there discussing the quality of image and video out of these cameras. So I am not really an expert in this matter. I would suggest that you look up those videos as for the samples, and my focus would be more of usability and practicality of these cameras for YouTube video production. At least within this video, I'm mainly shooting with Canon M50 for this sort of A-roll, but whenever as a B-roll you see Canon M6 Mark II, then it means that I have shot that video with Sony A7C and vice versa. As to all of my comparison videos, this video is going to be long and loaded with a lot of nitpicking, so nitpicking warning. The design of the camera is where the form meets the function. As to all the buttons and the dials, my overall thought is the fact that M6 Mark II has a better button and dial layout. I really like the M6 Mark II's dial on the shutter button. It is really convenient, and it has been my main method in changing the exposure values. The only way to control the exposure on Sony, on the other hand, is with your thumb. As you grip the camera with your palm and thumb, it becomes really difficult for your thumb to do all the work, and your index finger is pretty much just hanging out there and not doing much. The turning dial over here you can reach with your thumb, but you have to change your grip, and it is quite low, so you have to kind of sacrifice the grip, and it requires me to hold the camera with two hands if I want to be secure, or kind of like this orientation rather than this, because it becomes really uncomfortably insecure. I feel like I'm gonna drop the camera. You don't really switch the camera on and off as often as changing exposure, and your index finger is just hanging out there doing nothing. So I don't know why the on and off button is here and there's no front dial. I feel like there might have been an area where you can dedicate that to, but that has been omitted for Sony A7C. In addition, it might just be my small hands and stubby fingers, but is it just me, or does everyone find kind of difficult to change the dial with your thumb? I have to put my index finger up on top very uncomfortably and be able to turn this top dial. Otherwise, I have to hold with two hands and then change the dial like this. So it's a two-handed operation. Just all the dials are just out of the reach whenever I'm trying to use the camera one-handedly. Whilst on Canon M6 Mark II, all the dials are comfortable to turn and I have no problem accessing it with this single-handed grip, and I can access that. It has to do with it being lighter than Sony A7C. However, all the dials are much softer and smoother, has good amount of clicks, and I can turn that around without much of a problem. And index finger, that dial that I just mentioned, is definitely a plus, and there are much more functions that you can do with your index finger because of that. And also I can reach the back dial over here with comfortably holding the camera. I have no problem handling this and then accessing different buttons. Again, I can turn these things. The dials are soft. It's not really clunky or anything like that, but it doesn't click as much as Canon M6 Mark II would. It is more soft dial. Whereas the Canon sounds like. So I would say the button and the dial layout is definitely win on Canon M6 Mark II part. Okay, let's go a bit further with the buttons. I'm not sure if this is all intentional, but Sony decided to put the menu button on the top middle of the camera. I don't have a longest thumb, but I cannot reach that with my right hand. I do have to bring either my left hand over and push that, or change the grip so I can press that button. And because you need to press that button to enter the menu, as well as backing out from the selection that you have made, basically you can't navigate through the menu system one-handedly because this is so out of reach and so hard to reach with your regular grip. Changing the menu over here, and then to back out you have to go ahead and press that. It is just not intuitive. I don't know why it is like that. Although you can change or customize one of these buttons to be functioning as a menu button, so you can assign that. However, then you're gonna lose a button that you can actually access. So I don't know, it is just not really considered position for the menu button to be. In regards to the actual menu system on Sony, it kind of adds the salt to the injury because it doesn't allow you to touch through the menu to change anything or select or back out, anything like that. And the touch is only allowed to change focus when you are shooting in photo or video mode. I don't know, it does have touch function. I don't know why you can't just allow people to change either the exposure or navigate through the menu system. It is something that Sony said it is limited by the hardware, so no firmware update is coming to address that. It does work quite well whenever you are in actual shooting mode and then just touch on the screen to focus. But again, you can't really change your exposure values when you are staring at the camera from the front, the vlog or selfie mode. So you can't really change the exposure value. You have to reach to the back of the camera to change the dial that you can't see because there's no front dial over here. Yeah, the dial and the no touch to change exposure on the touch screen is kind of weird implementation. On the other hand, if we turn on the Canon M6 Mark II, over here the menu button is located right here where you can easily access to. and then once you are in the menu, you can actually touch it to navigate through, and all that touch works really well. I just formatted my card. That was terrible. I think I backed up everything. But anyways, going through the video, you can go to menu and then just reach and touch the menu system. And then also, even if you're doing the vlog type of shooting, on the screen itself, I can actually touch on the screen to select type of exposure value, and then either scroll or touch, or even use the front dial over here to scroll through the values. So that is really convenient. I don't know why that is just not really a thing for Sony. It is good that you have a front-facing screen for you to monitor what is going on, but if you can't really navigate through or change exposure, then I don't know, it's kind of half-baked. And people do complain that Sony menu system is somewhat convoluted than the Canon menu system. I think once you get used to the menu system, it's not really a huge deal, but I never got used to the Sony menu system since I haven't had the camera for such a long time, since it doesn't allow you to touch on the screen to go into different type of menu. It made it just a bit more difficult to get used to. So far, I have been really harsh on Sony A7C. Other than the limited touch ability, the flip out screen is actually quite nice. You can flip it out to the side like this, and it is fully articulating screen. So you can actually rotate it around in a more shielded position, or turn it around so that you can shoot whatever that is happening in front of you, or turn it around so that you can see yourself. Or if you're looking at something that is below you, then you can up the screen so you can see it from above or below if you are having sort of high shots. So that is all great. Whereas on Canon M6 Mark II, all you can do is high up, lower it, then the down low shot, you can up it. And for the front facing, this is all you get. It is more compact, I have to say, but as the screen comes up like this, when you turn the screen on, you'll see that some of the exposure value at the bottom of the screen is kind of hard to reach since it overlaps with the body of the camera a little bit. So it's that harder to reach. I actually have to struggle to hit the value that I want to change, and then once I land that touch, then I can use a dial to do that. But yeah, it is a little bit more difficult just because of the overlap. So I guess in terms of the screen articulation or articulating screen, Sony basically wins because it is convenient and nothing on the side actually blocks the screen. So if you were to turn it around, and there are 3 different flaps that open, but the bottom one actually opens to the bottom so it doesn't block the screen, and also the top one, which is a microphone flap, and then it is actually higher than the screen itself, therefore it doesn't block the screen. And you're not really assumed to take out your SD card in the middle of the shoot, which is in the middle, so you can actually just move the screen a little bit to pop out the SD card if you need to, and because of that, basically the screen never really becomes blocked. Although it has a little clip like this that makes noise that I kind of complained about already. You can remove it. If this wasn't a review sample, then I would have probably removed it, but I didn't want to go through that trouble. But yeah, that is something to be noted. A few things that I heard other people complain about are the shallow grip and the viewfinder, and also the single SD card. And first of all, I do not really find the grip to be all that much of an issue. My hands are quite small and it's a small camera, so it's okay. It's on a tad heavy side, perhaps than other Canon M6 Mark II and M50, but yeah, it's not really an issue. I think it's bigger issue that combination with the grip, the buttons are so out of reach that I can't really reach with a single thumb is an issue. And the second one was the viewfinder. Okay, if you want a viewfinder, neither of these cameras gonna give you a good experience. Canon M6 Mark II does not even have one, and Sony A7C has one, but it is not that great. Honestly though, I don't really use viewfinder, so again, that's not really an issue for me. And in terms of the SD card, yes, you have only one, and I guess this is not the pro camera, so you're not expected to have the redundancy in terms of the storage. If you're doing sort of a wedding shot, I suppose you can't really have the wedding again, so if your SD card is corrupted, then yeah, you're kind of out of luck. But in terms of the video shooting for YouTube purposes, yeah, I'm gonna be quite sad, just like how I just formatted all of the data inside of Canon M6 Mark II, but it's nothing that I cannot reshoot mostly. So it's okay, it's not something that I actually need or have experience of. So yeah, it's not really an issue. Moving on to the microphone. Surprisingly, this is where you have quite a big difference between the two. I don't really care for internal microphone because neither of them are really good. However, if you're doing YouTube videos or a similar type of recording, you're pretty much expected to mount a external microphone. And in terms of the microphone, if you were to mount it on top of Canon M6 Mark II, there's that major flaw of the screen getting blocked and not even being able to go all the way up. So that is a big issue related to the microphone. And you can get a bracket, something like this, and then mount that onto the cold shoe or hot shoe on top, but it actually conflicts with all the dials on top that are supposedly conveniently accessible. I don't know, it just kind of adds that much of complexity into the overall setup. The microphone jack is over here, so even if you mount a microphone over here with the little offset bracket, you are still having to route your microphone jack over here, either behind the screen or in front of the screen. I don't know why you would do that, but behind the screen, which means that changing the screen to folded position is gonna be blocked because of the microphone jack. Anyways, both Canon M6 Mark II and Sony A7C allows the microphone level to be monitored during shooting. So if I were to show you, you can see that there is a level that goes up and down as somebody speaks. And also on the Sony, there's gonna be microphone level that goes up and down. However, Canon M50 doesn't allow this. Yes, I'm comparing Canon M6 Mark II to Sony A7C, but I must rant about this because I was really frustrated with Canon M50 Mark II release. It was just a firmware update, and I suppose you could just update the firmware on existing Canon M50 to show microphone levels on the screen. I don't think that's that difficult. I don't know why they have to hold that back for a new version of camera that's supposedly better. And that sort of poor implementation is exactly the reason why I have considered to jump the ship. Okay, let's put all the rant aside, going back to the actual comparison of the two. Sony A7C has a headphone jack, so meaning you can plug the microphone on top here, and then there's gonna be a headphone jack at the bottom over here where you can plug your earphone or headphone to monitor the sound. However, neither of the Canon camera M50 or M6 Mark II has the headphone jack for you to monitor the sound. Combined with the microphone level and being able to monitor the sound with the headphone, it is so convenient to make sure all of your sound is correct with this camera. Whereas this one, it's a bit more of a hassle because you have to record and listen to it and make sure sometimes on the field you don't have all that time. So good job, Sony, for thinking of us in that regard. Okay, let's move on to the tripod mount of these two cameras. I know in a compact camera it's so hard to cram in all the ports and the buttons and the dials and tripod mounts and all the flaps, doors to the right places, but on Canon M5, M6 M6 Mark II and M50 and M50 Mark II, all of them have tripod mount so close to the battery door. They have been consistent. I don't know why they do this, but whenever you are having a tripod or quick release plates that are mounted to the camera, it is going to overlap with the battery door, and once you mount that, then you cannot access the battery door. It doesn't open, and inside of that battery door, SD card lives in there. So whenever you're trying to get the data off of SD card, then you're gonna have to undo the tripod. And notice how on this Manfrotto tripod, I've hacked away the side of this so that I can actually mount the tripod onto Canon series of cameras. I actually did this on my Canon M5 days. And once you mount it, so that you can still somewhat access the battery door. So yeah, I had to hack away a tripod in order to open the battery door. However, I actually now use Manfrotto's smaller tripod, the Pixi tripod, and if you mount that, it actually stays out of the battery doorway, so you can still open it and access the both of battery and SD card. And also, I recently have featured a quick release plate from Ulanzi or Ulanzi, the Falcam F38 quick release plate, and you can actually mount this because this is so small. Mount itself actually slides around so that you can actually mount it to the camera and then actually stay out of basically the doorway. I'll leave both products links in the description. And yeah, it is needless to say that on Sony A7C, the tripod mount is well out of reach of the battery door and in the center of the camera, so you can mount a big tripod or big quick release plates and it is going to stay out of overlapping the battery door. The battery door is over there and you can reach over here. In addition, they actually put the SD card on the side of the camera so you can easily access it rather than inside of the battery door. And the battery itself has a lot larger capacity, and because Sony offers better USB charging, I had almost no need to take this battery out. This was, I think, my third time opening that door too. Sony's done a better job in positioning the mounting point for all the tripod. I don't know, it's a small thing, but enough for me to hack away a tripod. Since we talked about the battery and some charging and USB connection to these cameras, I think it would be sensible to move on to the overall charging of these two cameras. Canon M6 Mark II has USB-C that is available on this side next to the HDMI, so on your grip side. And I don't know why that is like that, but I guess it is. And it does allow you the in-body charging. However, it requires you to have high output power delivery, which means the USB cable has to have the specific requirement for it to charge the camera. And that charger that is made by Canon and certified by Canon costs you quite a lot. So I wouldn't really invest in that. However, there are other alternatives out there that allows you to do that. So basically you have these charger bricks that are available off of Amazon that has some meaningful amount of power delivery. Then you can simply connect that USB-C port onto the camera, and then the LED indicator turns on and it starts charging the camera, which is really convenient because I use this power delivery to charge my laptop, my phone, and now it can charge my camera too. So if you're out and about, the charging process becomes that much easier. You just cannot charge this device off of a computer, but you can charge off of the wall and the power delivery charger. However, if you turn on the camera, it stops charging the camera. So if you're ever intending to use this camera as webcam or continue shooting for YouTube video purposes like this long video, then you would actually face a depleted battery after quite some time. Obviously it is not going to run out of battery within an hour or so, but after a meeting, after a YouTube video shot, in between, if you haven't turned off your camera to charge up more, then you're eventually going to be out of charge within a couple of hours. And you have to remember to turn off your camera and also unplug and plug into the wall. Yeah, that's quite a few steps I am going to miss. I actually have missed and have ended up with 0% battery on this camera when I was planning on shooting a video with this camera. So yeah, so that is something for you to keep in mind. However, in contrary, on Sony A7C, this one pretty much charges in every way. You can connect to PC or just one of those regular USB ports, and USB-C connected to the bottom on the left side of the camera, so the opposite side of the grip side. Just plug any sort of USB-C onto here, and then it is going to start charging. And it is going to be indicated over here that it is charging. This one is power delivery port off of a wall outlet, and actually this one over here is off of my PC, so it doesn't have power delivery. It's just a regular USB connected to my computer. And if you connect to that, now this camera is connected to my computer as well as being charged. It is going to trickle charge, so it's not going to charge with its full capacity, and it most likely will deplete eventually, but it is going to be much slower. And if you ever turn off, or if camera goes to sleep because you weren't using it, then it is going to charge rather than depleting its battery. So it is a lot more versatile, and you can just kind of leave it like this and use it for webcam purposes, do a meeting, and then just leave the scene and come back. It's gonna be charged, and it is a lot more convenient. In terms of the actual PC connection, just like how I have connected my Sony A7C, when you're connecting to your PC to monitor and control your cameras, it is quite a common practice for people to connect to your cameras via micro HDMI ports that are on these cameras. It is not a full-size or mini HDMI port. It is a micro HDMI. Yeah, it has its own issues, but that's what you get on a compact camera, so I'm fine to take that. But also, I don't really use those ports because of its sort of finickiness, and also it not being able to control the camera on screen. I'm actually using my mouse over here to control the focus and monitor the microphone level on my computer. So I'm actually seeing myself on the computer as well as being able to control via Canon EOS utility that they offer. There is a box around my face, so it lets me know that it is focusing on my face. But if I want to switch over to the cameras, I can actually click on it and then change focus. So the software name for Canon side is Canon EOS utility, and then on the Sony side, it is Imaging Edge, the remote. And I will just kind of give you a quick rundown of its functionalities and the differences. So for example, the Sony solution allows more control over the camera. There are more things that you can control over the camera. For example, on Sony's, you can actually change this mode dial inside of the software, so you don't have to actually physically change the mode dial for you to go from movie mode to the photo mode. And I do this quite often whenever I'm shooting movie. I'm in the movie mode, whereas when I'm capturing the thumbnails, I want to be in the photo mode so I can actually enjoy the maximum amount of resolution and the frame size. So I have to actually go around the camera right now in order to change to the photo mode, and then change the dial physically for Canon M50 or Canon M6. Whereas in Sony, you can actually change that with software, and I don't have to go around the camera or reach back behind it. And overall software experience, the interface on the Sony side is more modernized and it is more intuitive in some ways. And I say some ways because whilst Canon is, I guess, less modernized, it looks somewhat aged, but it is somewhat more functional in some ways. Sorry, I kind of caveated a lot of words there, but what I mean is the fact that I can change focus on the screen, and I can use my mouse on the computer to basically point at the camera. Here is a Canon M6 Mark II that is on the focus, and I can change the focus onto that, or I can switch over to perhaps, so there you go. Now it is focused onto that camera, and then back to my face, or perhaps the background over there. I can change the focus, and I can basically control the focus on it, and I can actually see where the camera is focusing to. Let's get it back to my face. However, the Sony doesn't allow you to do that. Sony only shows a focal point or focus point on the screen itself of the camera, and it doesn't display it on the utility or the remote or imaging edge. There's so many names for it, I'm getting confused, sorry. The Sony Image Edge software doesn't allow you to see the focus point nor control the focal point. You can actually manually control in terms of closer versus further away from the camera, but you can't actually click on the screen to change the focus or shift the focus or lock onto the object. Oh, and one thing I did want to mention, I don't know if I'm just completely missing out what I'm supposed to do. On the Canon EOS utility, I can move my mouse cursor over the shutter button, and once the mouse cursor is over the shutter button, it kind of acts like half press, so it focuses on the object when I'm in the photo mode. However, on Sony, none of that was available. I just either press or I don't. So I don't know, maybe that's something that a separate button allows you to do, but the half press on the shutter button as you hover over that button on the Canon EOS utility was quite intuitive. In regards to connecting these two cameras to your computer, when you are having a data USB-C, then you can connect to your cameras. I guess Sony is a bit easier since once you connect, it is going to start charging it. However, before you do that, you have to go through your menu and you have to change the mode from USB storage to PC remote mode so that you can actually use this camera as a webcam as well as being able to control the camera with your computer. And since you have to change the modes, once you're in the webcam mode or being able to control the camera via image edge of Sony, so it is on a PC remote mode, then you connect the camera, and once you're done shooting the video, the data lives inside of SD card, and I cannot download that because it is not on the USB storage mode. Whenever I shot the videos with Sony A7C, I had to take out the SD card and then insert onto my computer, download the stuff, and then reinsert it back. It was a bit cumbersome to unmount the camera, go into the menu system since this thing doesn't allow you to touch and navigate through the menu system. Yeah, it was quite cumbersome then taking out SD card and then downloading the data and then reinserting the SD card reader. So that is unnecessary step that is involved with the Sony camera. Whereas in Canon, actually, there's nothing that you need to change prior to connection with your computer. You just connect the USB-C port that is connected to your computer into Canon M6 Mark II, and then it is going to shoot as long as you have the software installed, the both webcam and Canon EOS utility. And once you are done shooting, it actually prompts you whether you want to download those data or not. If it is a video or if it's a photo, it is going to save outright onto your computer. Sony does that too, but not for the video. So it is going to prompt you whether you want to download those videos, and once you set up where you want to save those videos onto, then it is going to start transferring. Mind you, that transfer is not fast, so it probably is faster if you have a lot of data that you have written onto the SD card for you to just take out the SD card and put it onto your computer. But short shootings like this, I would just rely on already connected USB port to download all the data onto my computer for it to be edited. So I guess in terms of connectivity, battery, that sort of thing, those are comparable points where I can kind of nitpick on. But because Sony A7C has a full frame sensor, as well as it is targeted for more advanced user, perhaps it has some functions that is just not available at all on M6 Mark II. The in-body stabilization, or IBIS, is available on A7C. It functions exactly the same as A7 III, which I haven't really tried, so I only tried the stabilization on this camera and it is fantastic. It gives you a lot more stable footage as well as sharper photos. Whereas on Canon M6 Mark II, it doesn't have any in-body stabilization. It does have a digital one, but I opt not to use it because it crops into the image and I prefer sort of the wider shot, and the digital method of stabilizing your image is not always the best, and sometimes I kind of rely on software to handle that rather than the camera. And also the lens itself, the kit lens that comes with the Canon M6 Mark II as well as M50 has IS, image stabilization, built into it, so it does stabilize the footage somewhat, but definitely it is not as good as A7C. And yes, because Sony A7C has a full frame, it gives you stunning low light shots. When I shot the photo for the first time in sort of a bit more darkness where all the lights are not turned on, I was surprised with its quality, the sharpness that are maintained even on the low light situation, high ISO settings. So it is going to just give you better results. Sony is just really known for low light capabilities, but because this is a full frame sensor, it is able to give you much better looking photos as well as videos. And I personally prefer having a lot of blurred background so that it is not as distracting. It is my personal taste, but a lot of people kind of agree with that taste. And full frame sensor allows you to have more blurry background, the shallower depth of field, so that you have that blurred background. Whereas on the crop sensor of M50 or M6 Mark II, it doesn't offer you as much blurred background unless you use different set of lenses that is much faster so that you can open up your aperture. Okay, so I think we've reached the point where we need to discuss about the prices of these two cameras. Canon M6 Mark II is about $1,100 with a kit lens, and then Sony A7C is about $2,100 with the kit lens. The lenses and the accessory price differences aside for these cameras, the increase in picture quality and the workflow improvements need to justify that $1,000 price difference. So the question is, does Sony's offering justify the difference? Well, I think the picture quality is definitely improved on A7C. It does give you better picture, better video, better looking pixels. The overall image quality is so much better, and that is quite expected as you are moving from crop sensor to full frame sensor. The more advanced features such as in-body stabilization and headphone monitoring is just something that Canon's lineup doesn't really offer at all. And for some people, those features are gonna be enough to justify the $1,000 price difference. But there are a few workflow differences that are quite disruptive to my current setup with Sony A7C, such as not being able to transfer the data after the shoot, or click on the screen to change focus, or touch on the screen to navigate through the menu system or change exposure. Those are perhaps kind of nitpicky things, but it is somewhat disruptive to my overall workflow. So I may just have to wait and see what Sony comes up next, and also Canon comes up next. Are they going to build in-body stabilization or better in-body charging? All in-body stuff. And for Sony, are they going to allow touch on the screen to change exposure, revamp the remote software so that you can easily change the focus and monitor it? I don't know. I'm gonna have to wait and see. And if you have reached this far, kudos to you for sticking around this long. If you have found any of these cameras to be the right fit for you, then please use the links in the description. Whilst those are affiliated links, it doesn't cost you anything extra and it helps to support the channel. If you have enjoyed this content, please like this video and consider subscribing to my channel to watch more of these type of contents. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'll see you next time.